have never been so much in love before. What a difference how true love made in my life.
Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
And so right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Nice to have you with us today. As promised, I'll be sharing some insights into the new technology 5G and how the entire country, all of America, will have these 5G towers, which means that everyone's going to be adversely affected. The trouble is they have rolled this out thinking only of profit for the companies doing it without considering the health consequences to those of us who would be exposed to it. So we will be giving you a series of experts on a regular basis. I hope that you will take their challenges to your local communities, your local city councils to outlaw the 5G towers. They'll be presenting the good science behind this. Also today, I am going to be sharing a commentary from Eon magazine. It's a good magazine. There are a lot of interesting and stimulating articles. Clifton Mark writes about political literacy and psychology and lifestyle-related topics, and his article is entitled, "A Belief in Meritocracy is Not Only False, It's Morally Wrong." Okay. I'll read you not the whole article, but enough for you to get the idea. Then I will offer a difference of opinion, and then it allows you to see why we should be thinking a little deeper on all these topics. And the problem if we did not offer legitimate challenge when we see that something is so lopsided, one-sided. So I'll be sharing my own commentary on that today. We begin with the latest on health and healing, and this is about olive oil. It comes from New York University, and it talks about olive oil can help maintain normal blood viscosity. Now, this was a presentation at the American Heart Association's Epidemiological and Prevention Lifestyle Conference. And it revealed that when you regularly, and I'm suggesting daily, consume olive oil and a reduction in platelet activity in a study of healthy obese adults who are at risk of developing cardiovascular disease, it increased the blood platelet activation, it increases blood clot formation, which can impair blood flow. Quote, "To our knowledge, this is the first study to assess the effects of dietary composition, olive oil specifically, on platelet function in obese people." So what this is saying in lay language is that if you're obese, if you're overweight, if you're diabetic, you have a higher tendency to cardiovascular disease. But if you had the extra virgin organic olive oil each day, a teaspoon, a tablespoon, that will help maintain normal blood viscosity. Hence, you're less likely to have a stroke. And having worked for decades, both at the Tri-State Healing Center with the whole team of medical doctors, and we were doing people's blood chemistry all the time. And you could show people, this is what your blood looks like when you came in the morning, fasting. Now here it is, and you put it up on a dark screen, you show them. Now this is the blood 1/2 hour after you drank a green juice, maybe celery and green apple, cucumber. This is the typical diet that you say that you ate for lunch. This is a cheeseburger with a milkshake. Do you see the difference? In the one, when you woke up in the morning, the blood was not as vital. It was a little turgid. Now look at it after you had the green juice. It's picking up. The red blood cells are more separate. They're not aggregating, clumping, less likely to have a clot form and cause a heart attack or stroke. And if we take a sample of the blood, your blood is redder. There's more oxygenation. Now look at your blood after you had that meal. There's streaks of fat all throughout your blood. And those streaks of fat are aggregating red blood cells. That means that with every standard American diet, you risk a heart attack or a stroke. You're much like Christopher Walken's character in The Deer Hunter in the last scenes where he's zonked out on drugs and trying to play Russian roulette, knowing the only way he wins is if he loses. That sooner or later there's going to be a bullet in the chamber. So every time you have that fast food meal, you're playing Russian roulette. You could have a stroke from that. In fact, you ought to see the epidemiology on how many strokes or heart attacks occur after a heavy fat meal. My older brother Howard, perfect example. He had a stroke right after he had a bologna sandwich on white bread and a milkshake. Now, did he know better? You bet. Then why did he do it? Condition. You've heard me say this many times, but let me just say it again. Before you die of cancer, heart disease, distraction in a traffic accident, or commit suicide, your belief system has already given you permission or the tools to do it. So at the end of the day, what is never on any death certificate is died because of a faulty belief system. But that's what causes it. So people feel comfort in their belief systems and they maladapt to them. That's the danger of a bad diet. On the other hand, if you come from a culture like the Mediterranean culture, or the Japanese culture, or the Okinawa, which is Japanese culture, or the Hunsakat culture, the Indian culture, the subcontinent of Indian culture, then you're going to be conditioned to adapt tastes. And so what might be bitter or pungent to someone else will be completely normal to you. And if we grow up on a very sweet diet, which we do, and then someone comes from a country that doesn't have to sweeten foods, but appreciates its natural sweetness, it'll be way too sweet. These are adapted. And we, unfortunately, for most Americans, not all, but about 90%, we have maladapted our nutritional needs to a faulty diet that cannot possibly supply it. So this test that they did showed this with olive oil. Also, from the University of Illinois and the University of Miami and Wayne State University, they did a study together. And they found that pesticides are linked to an increased risk of heart disease. Now, we knew about leukemia, and we knew about hormone disruption and endocrine disruption with pesticides in parts per billion, but we didn't know about heart disease. So, the dangers of spraying those dandelion greens, which you should be eating, as they're extremely nourishing in calcium and magnesium and chlorophyll, and you're spraying Roundup on them, which is bad. Now you're increasing your risk of cancer and heart disease. Yeah? And so that's a double whammy. And a lot of Americans want to have that perfect manicured lawn, and a dramatic increase in the risk of arterial fibrillation, or AFib, is now happening in no small part because this British medical journal, Heart, says it's because of exposure to heavy metals and pesticides. So, that's what we're doing. So, pesticides and metal exposure can be on a cardiovascular risk factor elevation scale. They used 7,404 participants in the Hispanic Community Health Study and study of Latinos. This was a long-term study, and unfortunately, if you grow up in an environment where you've used pesticides, then you're used to them. But what if you grew up into an environment that had no pesticides? And if you've ever been to Puerto Rico, wonderful country, phenomenal people, very loving, strong family, and you take the time to get away from the tourist areas and you go inland, and you can go just about anywhere in no time at all, you'll find that the diet in the interior is very, very natural, versus in the city, it's no different than any other city's diet. It's not a healthy diet. People live longer, they have less diseases, and in fact, what I'm willing to do, and I'm willing to, finance it out of my own pocket, I'm willing to do a study. But we have to have people who are qualified in science, health science, to participate, where we will take a couple trips to Puerto Rico, and we will have maybe 100 people that we will get health diaries from and do complete detailed surveys in the country who've maintained a healthy diet, the native diet. Then we want to compare them to people who live in the cities and who eat the food from the cities. Mind you, if you've ever been to Puerto Rico, and most people stay in the hotels who travel there, almost all that food is imported. Very, very little food is grown and given to the hotels. The water's been overfished. As a result, there's no fish, so they have to get their fish from other countries. And so then it means they're getting very processed foods, not good. Very starch-based and fat and sugar, lots of fried foods. So then let's just do a study of the difference between older individuals who've maintained their diet and people who are in the cities who eat a more commercialized diet, more like the American diet, and compare the heart attacks, strokes, obesity, diabetes, different parameters, pain, arthritis, because when you eat a processed diet, you're going to end up with inflammation, frequently inflammation in your joints, hence arthritis, gout in the toes, and high blood pressure, lots of salt. And I want to do this study within the next 6 months. So if you are qualified as a nurse or someone, a social worker, anyone with a medical background, let me know, because I'll put together a team and we'll go down there and we'll do a study and we'll bring it back and we'll publish it in a peer-reviewed journal and we'll broadcast about it and hopefully get that information out to the Puerto Rican people in the churches and the communities to let them know that they can change their diet. And I'm willing to go into the community, as I did with the Caribbean community and the African American community, to show the dangers of the current diet versus an ideal diet, and then work with the people in a given religious environment. I don't care which religion it is, doesn't matter to me, I respect them all, so that we can have people working together. Their support system is their priest, imam, minister, rabbi, and so they have a strong support system. We did this with an African-American congregation in White Plains, Seventh-day Adventists, over 6 months. Tremendous changes. I mean, tremendous changes in their health. I mean, we lost thousands and thousands of pounds of extra weight over that 6 months. Almost every disease imaginable was improved or gone completely at the end of 6 months. And I filmed it. I just have never done anything with that film. I should. That's what I'm going to be doing, resurrecting a lot of these films. But I just wanted to show it could be done, and it was, and it was successful. So, and then I did it in Brooklyn with a Jamaican group, a church of Jamaicans, and we changed their health around too. That was over a 3-month period. So let's do this now for different groups that have a high degree of obesity, heart disease, high blood pressure. That's the African American and Latino. Also, I'll be going this summer to 4 different reservations and setting up a whole health program. And if they don't have access to the food, I'm going to ship it in to them. I'm also going to build them hydroponics so they can have, especially up north in North Dakota, where they can't grow anything in the wintertime, but we're going to have in-the-ground baled greenhouses, hydroponics, so they can have 12 months a year of fresh food and get them all the food and the whole grains and the nuts and seeds and legumes. And I'll work with people within the community who can then educate other people. And then we'll have a video conferencing with them on a weekly basis to make sure they're all adhering to it. And if they need anything, we'll get it to them. And we're going to film this to show one of the shortest lifespans in America. In fact, the shortest lifespan in America are Native Americans living on reservations. And why? Why is there so much alcoholism? Why is there so much obesity? Some of the points are obvious, others are not. That's what I intend to be doing this summer. Anyhow, so the call is out, and we're going to be working with people in Puerto Rico and trying to assess their health and spread the message. Also, can yoga help those experiencing depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder? Well, the University of North Carolina wanted to find out. So they did a study, and they found that, yes, it does make a difference. It calms them down. It reduces anxiety. It gives them more energy. And they reviewed 185 studies. And this was published in the peer-reviewed journal Trauma, Violence, and Abuse. And it suggests that clinicians and service providers consider recommending yoga as an intervention for them. I definitely agree. That's a good idea. And from the University of Eastern Finland, gut bacteria compound may be the key component to fighting type 2 diabetes. What does this mean? It means that there is a force of nature residing within every single person's body, a force that responds to threats, protects the blood, and assimilates vitamins from our food. We're in a relationship with this force. It coexists within us. It influences us, and we influence it. This force comprises of trillions of friendly bacterial cells, and they communicate with every other cell. They carry our vital functions that ultimately affects our well-being. We can nourish and cultivate the diversity and strength of this biome, or we can abandon and sterilize it with things like antibiotics and glyphosate and other sterilizing chemicals. Well, researchers from Finland have found that gut bacteria can produce a metabolite that protects against type 2 diabetes. The substance is called indole, that's I-N-D-O-L-E, propionate, P-R-O-P-I-O-N-I-C acid. It is produced by your gut bacteria in the presence of fiber-rich diet. So put the pieces together. Diabetics frequently lack fiber in the diet. They're eating a lot of processed foods. People on high-protein diets have poor bacteria because they're eating a lot of non-fibrous foods. Sugar, fat, and protein don't have fiber in the standard American diet. Now, vegan does because the amino acids are coming from legumes and beans, but not from meat and chicken and fish, which has no fiber. So when you then end up colonizing negative bacteria with the sugar, meat, and alcohol, then your body is fighting against this constantly. You're far more susceptible to chronic disease development. But when you include lots of healthy fibers from all the different foods that are healthy, from whole grains to nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables, especially the berries, then you recolonize. And when you recolonize, that's when you create this particular acid, this indole acid. And that then helps protect the blood sugar from rising when you have diabetes. So therefore, your gut bacteria can directly prevent type 2 diabetes across, and this was 3 separate studies. And this was in the Finnish diabetes prevention study. So that's good news in all levels. And from Sourka University Medical Center in Israel, cancer patients found to benefit from cannabis. Scientific study analyzed outcomes of 2,970 cancer patients to confirm results. So that is good. So there are now at least 34 countries and the same number of states in the United States where the use of cannabis or cannabis-derived products is approved for treating symptoms of various diseases. And I believe it should be everywhere because there's 22,000 studies in our own PubMed showing you what they're doing in a positive way with the cannabinoids. I'm Gary Null. That's the latest on health and healing. Back in a moment. And we're going to take a few of your calls. So we'll come back right to the call line. Please stay with us.
Yeah, hi, Gary. This is Melinda from New York City, and I was in your nutritional study in 2014 from September to Thanksgiving. And actually, I'd like to tell your audience that I didn't miss a thing. I really didn't. So I'm calling because I discovered this really great vegan substitute for cheese made by a Canadian company, and the ingredients are filtered water, tapioca starch, coconut oil, vegan natural flavors, pea protein isolate, non-GMO expeller pressed canola and or safflower oil, chicory root extract, sea salt, xanthan gum, tricalcium phosphate, lactic acid, vegan, pea starch, potato protein, vegan enzyme, and coconut cream. And I'm just curious whether this kind of a delicacy, it's actually delicious, and there's different flavors, whether it's really better for you than a good cheese that comes from organic milk and is not too heavily chemicalized and full of hormones and antibiotics, because it really is good. And I just think this product that I'm asking about is highly processed, obviously. So is it really better for you and okay to eat? And
yes, it's okay to eat, and listen carefully to the difference. If you had organic dairy, like organic kefir, you're getting a lot of probiotics, which is good. If you had organic sour cream, organic cottage cheese, organic yogurt, you're getting far more of the probiotics than you would in a normal American diet, far more. So that's good. But what if you're allergic to dairy, as a lot of people are? Then your immune system is actually fighting against your body every time you have dairy. Also, dairy should be used very sparingly, even organic dairy, because one of the most important compounds that allows the dairy to gel and hold together as a cheese is casein. Casein is also historically was used in mortars to solidify bricks and compounds, and it does the same thing in your intestine. In fact, when I'm helping people detox who've been on a high dairy diet, 3 things I notice. First, that the bloating and constipation that is common is diminished or eliminated. The puffiness under the eyes is gone down. Sometimes, the first time in their life, they have normal eyes, not bags under them, and discoloration. The mucus they frequently find that they're expelling from their throat and nose in the morning is no longer present. And the gooiness at the end of the eyes is no longer present. So that's just some of the reasons why we should consider dairy, even organic dairy. Is it good? If you're not allergic to it, it can be fine. But understand it's not really helping the body in a major way, because the calcium is not what's important in dairy. Yeah, there's calcium in there, but it's the magnesium that's really the central nutrient for mineralizing the bones. But to the other question, if you had a choice between no cheese or having a cheese that's a vegan cheese, then the question is, what kind of processing do they do? Some processing they can do at low temperatures, which does not alter the nutritional value, but I rarely see eating any of the alternative vegan foods as a rationale for getting good nutrition. I don't know of any vegan cheese that I would eat simply because it's highly nourishing for me. No, if I want highly nourishing foods, I'm going to have foods that are more close to their natural state. Juicing is the highest form. In fact, I actually did the study. And I'd worked for a year on this, and I was inventing some different ways of measuring an energy force from the food. And then one day, this gentleman showed up at the Institute, and he was from Italy. He had worked at the University of Rome, and he had heard about some research that was published in mine in the Journal of Psychotronic Research on energy. He had invented a machine that could actually measure energy on, let's say, a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the highest, and sure enough, and he worked there for about a month, just every day he was there, every day. And we were doing all this experiments. We must have tested 300 or 400 different types of foods, like an apple. Then we would dry the apple. Then I'd make applesauce with the apple. Then we'd make apple juice with the apple. And I wanted to see what happens to the vital life force of the energy every step in the processing of a product. And that told me a lot about the closer to its original state, the more energy you're getting. So I could eat an apple, that's the highest state. But if I juiced it and drank the cider right there, that was even more of the energy going in, because you can drink more of apple juice than you can eat of the apple. But every step beyond that, you're losing a point of energy. And that was true of almost everything except for grains. Grains were actually like a 6 until they were germinated and sprouted, and then they went up high. Like wheat berry is about a 6, but the moment you go to a wheat grass, you go to a 10. So when then you juice the wheat grass, then you're getting a 10 plus. How much beyond that, I don't know. But so then I started formulating a diet to helping terminally ill people based upon getting them foods that had a 10 or higher into the healing range. So when it comes to something like an alternative to bacon, they have like a tempeh bacon, or some chicken cutlet that's made from soy. You're not eating that because you're getting a full spectrum of vitamins, minerals, enzymes, and phytonutrients. You're getting some protein, generally 3 to 5 or 6 grams. But as long as it's satisfying some of your essential taste requirements, so at least you can have some cheese. If you took a piece of vegan cheese that has minimal processing, and you can write at the company and they'll tell you the processing involved, and you put a slice of that cheddar, and then you put a tomato, and then you put a slice of jack, and you put an onion, sweet onion, and you put some honey mustard on that, and pickles. That's a great dish to have. You can slice some avocados. So as an adjunct to a well-balanced diet, these vegan alternatives are fine. There's nothing in the ingredients that you raise that would be a real red flag. And because you look at your top 3 ingredients, because that's the dominant ingredients in the product. And tapioca is fine, and the different natural starches from the whole grains, those are fine. Okay, hope that answers that. We'll take one more.
I'm looking at an article that is dated yesterday, March 11th, from Forbes, and I read it. I don't believe it. It sounds like PR subterfuge, but I checked it out on Google Scholar, and it seems to hold water. The title is, "It Sounds Crazy, but Fukushima, Chernobyl, and 3 Mile Island Show Why Nuclear is Inherently Safe." I don't believe it, but if I didn't see anything that seemed to go against this in a somewhat quick review and trying to use different search terms in Google Scholar. Really would love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you.
I don't believe that it's a public relations piece. I read the article. I believe people should read this, not because it's something to support, but it shows us what the establishment believes is to be the truth. In the reality, all nuclear is dangerous and inherently dangerous. The 3 myths that we were told, that nuclear is so cheap to manufacture that it won't even be metered, that it's safe, and that it's green. To create nuclear power, nuclear fission, you have to have lots of plutonium, and the byproducts of creating the actual nuclear condition is extremely dangerous and toxic to the environment. In fact, there is no place on Earth currently that is safe to store the spent nuclear fuel rods. Now, spent doesn't mean that it has no radiation. If you just stood by one of these bars, just a single bar, you'd end up dying of radiation poisoning. These are extremely lethal for the next 2,000 to 3,000 years. So we put them in concrete casts and put them into the ground. We put them into gigantic, they look like a circular swimming pool, and there's water constantly going into them, as much as 1 billion gallons a day. And that's bad for the environment because you kill up to 1 billion fish a year from each one of these 100, more or less, nuclear facilities around the United States. I believe there's 98 now functioning. Now, if anything, Fukushima shows you why it's inherently dangerous, because it's been spewing 100,000 gallons of toxic, highly radioactive water into the Pacific, so much so that 1,000 miles in every direction of this plume has killed everything. No fish, nothing can live there. It's a dead zone. And the Japanese government, unfortunately, and TEPCO, their manufacturer of it, who runs the facility, should have at the beginning called in all the world's scientists and nuclear physicists and engineers and said, can't we build a sarcophagus out of concrete and steel, much like we did around Chernobyl, which was brilliant and, by the way, extremely courageous, because all the helicopter pilots and the people that went in to measure the equipment knew they would die. In fact, within weeks, they did die. And to me, that is the ultimate sacrifice. And because you know you're not coming back. And there's no cure for radiation sickness at the level they had it. In any case, but it worked. It saved millions of people from being additionally exposed. And that Chernobyl radiation was measured clear around the world. And in Fukushima's radiation was measured in the United States. In 3 Mile Island, Dr. Ernest Sternglass and Dr. Jay Gould, both professors, and myself wrote a paper, scientific paper, that showed that 50,000 babies died after 3 Mile Island who were in the downdrift of that contamination. I have it. I have published the article, and we finally, I believe, published it in Townsend Letter because it was rejected everywhere. And yet we got the actual birth and death records. And then lo and behold, Sternglass called me one day and he said, boy, you were right about the authorities having a deep reach. The original statistics that we received now have been altered. And we actually then wrote a new article showing the figures before infant mortality and 6 months after, and they had wiped out those 50,000 deaths, because they didn't want to show that 50,000 babies died because of 3 Mile Island. So virtually everything we've been taught about nuclear being safe is a lie. And that's why I did the documentary Knocking on the Devil's Door. In fact, just this morning, we communicated with Helen Caldicott, Dr. Caldicott, who is just one of the greatest scientists and activists in the world. She's 4 hours from a major city in Australia, and because we're filming a new update on nuclear. And we'll be having Carl Grossman and Harvey Wasserman, both professors, on our program to discuss nuclear and why it's very dangerous. In fact, I saw last night someone called and says, watch this guy on Tucker Carlson, and he was one of the co-founders of Greenpeace, and he's no longer in Greenpeace, but he's very pro-nuclear. And everything he said I would offer a rebuttal to. And he's not a global warming enthusiast. I don't feel he's a bad person. I just have a different point of view. And I just wish that Carlson had invited one of us who knows the truth of it, who's done the research and written articles, to counter it. So here's the point. Nuclear is inherently unsafe. There's no place to get rid of the byproduct of it. And the factories are not safe, and they're leaking. And Germany, thank goodness, is closing down all of their nuclear power plants as they increase all of their natural and renewable energy resources. We should be doing the same, and we're doing none of the above. That's all the time we have for today. We're going to take a break and come right back. Please stay with us. In just a few minutes, I'm going to be sharing a commentary from Clifton Mark from Eon on the fact that it's immoral to be a part of meritocracy. And he lays out some very compelling arguments. I'll share them with you, and then I'll deconstruct them. It's nothing against him. I believe that we should have open and honest and civil dialogue and discourse and debate on these important issues, because I can tell you where his is going to go in our current mindset of young people. But before we do that, I was just informed that we have some people who have just called in. We are, by the way, hopefully in the final days of raising money for our sister station WBAI, and which we're happy to do. They need money to pay bills. Everybody's working very hard, and I appreciate all their efforts. And I also appreciate all the volunteers. A special thank you to Mitchell Cohen. I'm sorry, I don't know the names of the other volunteers. I haven't met them. But it takes a lot of people in a well-coordinated effort to see that you get your premiums. And they do it, and along with Andrea Katz. So we're going to have a retreat, and this is going to pay for a lot of premiums. In fact, for several years, there would be up to 5,000 premiums just from my own audience that would take a year to get out because they didn't have the money to pay for it. They paid other bills instead. So in the last 3 years, virtually every premium has been paid in a very timely manner, and the premium is sent right out. And that's because we do these retreats, and they can pay for thousands of premiums. And what is a retreat? A retreat is whatever a person needs it to be. If you need to relax, de-stress, just get away from the hecticness and the excessive responsibilities most of us have, it's for you. If you want a loving and supportive professional group to be there to help you in your journey, we have it. If you want to be in one of those beautiful places in the United States, it just doesn't get any more natural with eagles. In fact, there are 2 eagles living in a tree that people can sit right under and watch the eagles, or the swans, or any of the other guinea hens and fowl that run around. You can do so. If you just want to sit with butterflies in a butterfly house, we have that. Take an artist healing class, yoga, meditation, tapping. And this year, for the first time, we're going to have Sham Bhatnagar. Sham's been a friend of mine, wow, almost 50 years. He brought chakra to the United States. You've never heard the word chakra before him. He is an expert in sound and healing, and he'll be doing workshops each day. We look forward to that. He's about 84 years of age and still vitally healthy. But also a lot more happens. Great gourmet meals and cooking classes and all types of classes and lectures. I do lectures all day long. And let's say hello to a few people who've had experience. They're just calling in now. I haven't spoken with them. One is Ed. Hi, Ed. Are you there?
Yes, I am, Gary.
Ed, tell us your story briefly, please.
I just wanted to let you know that in 2017 of April, my wife, Kelly, was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia due to multiple transfusions that year. Every 7 to 10 days, she was getting a transfusion. On that very day, we both became vegan. We removed all pro-inflammatory foods. I called a very nice gentleman who has a program on your station called Bobby Elias, and he put me on to Luanne Pennesi, who was very kind enough to send some recipes out and foods to avoid. Now, I want to tell you that she had a lot of other conditions, my wife, but they've all been eliminated because of being vegan. Today, she has gone 22 and a half weeks without a transfusion. Her white blood cell count back then was 6.7, is 18.1. We had her on a high dose of probiotics, close to 100,000 billion every day, 100 billion every day. And we loved being vegan. Her blood pressure was borderline high. It was 149/90. It is now 110/70. Her hematologist called us in December and told us whatever we're doing to keep on doing it. Her cholesterol was high. Within 2 months of becoming vegan, her primary doctor sent her a letter congratulating her on lowering her cholesterol by 60%. And these are people that wanted her on statin drugs, which we also refused. I can't tell you, Gary, how thankful we are to you for all of the help and information that you have given us. And Luanne Pennesi, we worked from your cookbook as well, the arthritis anti-inflammation cookbook and those recipes, and I never learned how to cook before until those books. And I can tell you that she also had rapid AFib episodes where her heart rate would go out of control before becoming vegan. She has not had an episode in over a year and a half of that. Again, being vegan, we will never go back to the other way. We have more energy than we ever thought we had, and it's absolutely wonderful. And her numbers this week actually went up from last week. They were stabilized at 9.4 for hemoglobin count. This week now they're 9.6.
That's all good. And what you should do is ask your doctor on the leukemia, when was the last time with all their medication they had a patient that could go this long without infusion? They won't be able to tell you one. So you're on the right track. Okay. Ed, thank you, and all the best for you and your wife. Now we have one more, Isel. Hi, Isel.
Hi, Gary.
Tell us quickly your story, Isel.
I came in April of 2018. I had breast cancer. I'm the mother of 3 children, and I have been to 3 retreats since then. Before the retreats, I was sleeping around 16 hours a day. I wasn't productive, and I was down to 87 pounds. But since the retreat, I followed the protocol, and I am up to 117 pounds right now. I sleep maybe 6 hours a day. My relationship with people is totally different, and I've taken on my life again since the retreat.
What's the status of your cancer?
I have just received a clear bill of health as of 11/15 today that I am cancer-free. I
would have started with that. I think that being cancer-free after advanced end-stage cancer is an important priority, more so than how you communicate with people. But that's all right. It all goes together. Well, it's good, and we look forward. Hopefully you'll come to the next one, because the absence of disease is only the first step. Remember, freedom from disease also requires freedom for optimal health. And that now you're in that second step of the journey. So good for you, Isel.
Thank you, Gary.
Just a few people, and we have thousands of case histories like that. Real people who've attended retreats. If you'd like to join us for the last week of April, or you can come 1 or 2 weeks, the first week of May, call Luanne Pennesi. She screens everyone. Make sure it's right for you. 903-881-7008. 903-881-7008. And remember, we were able to purchase premiums immediately and get them out to you immediately, because the station doesn't have to pay for this. I'm paying for it. All right? Because that's the commitment I have to my audience and helping BAI stay alive. Join us at 903-881-7008. It'll be 1 or 2 weeks that can make all the difference in your life. Now, I'm looking at the clock. How much time do I have? I'm going to take a shot at it. I may have enough time to get this in. First, I want to read some of what he says from Eon, current issue. Quote, "We are true to our creed when a little girl born in the bleakest poverty knows that she has the same chance to succeed as anybody else." That was said by Barack Obama in his inaugural address. Quote, "We must create a level playing field for American companies and workers," Donald Trump in his inaugural address. Well, meritocracy has become a leading social ideal. Politicians across the ideological spectrum continually return to the theme that the rewards of life, money, power, jobs, university admission should be distributed according to skill and effort. The most common metaphor is the even playing field upon which players can rise to the position that fits their merit. Conceptually and morally, meritocracy is presented as the opposite of systems such as hereditary aristocracy, in which one's social position is determined by the lottery of birth. Under meritocracy, wealth and advantage are merits, rightful compensation, not the fortuitous windfall of external events. Most people don't just think the world should be run meritocratically. They think it is meritocratic. In the UK, 84% of respondents to a British social attitude survey stated that hard work is either essential or very important when it comes to getting ahead. And the Brookings Institute found that 69% of Americans believe that people are rewarded for intelligence and skill. Respondents in both countries believe that external factors such as luck and coming from a wealthy family are much less important. While these ideas are most pronounced in these two countries, they are popular across the globe. Although widely held, the belief that merit, rather than luck, determines success or failure in the world is demonstrably false. This is not least because merit itself is, in large part, the result of luck. Talent and capacity for determined effort, sometimes called grit, and depend a great deal on one's genetic endowments and upbringing. This is to say nothing of the fortuitous circumstances that figure into every success story. Robert Frank recounts the long shots and coincidences that led Bill Gates' stellar rise as Microsoft's founder, as well as Frank's own success as an academic. Luck intervenes by granting people merit, and again by furnishing circumstances in which merit can translate into success. This is not to deny the industry and talent of successful people. However, it does demonstrate that the link between merit and outcome is tenuous and indirect at best. According to Frank, this is especially true where the success in question is great and where the context in which it is achieved is competitive. There are certainly programmers nearly as skillful as Gates who nonetheless fail to become the richest person in the world. In competitive contexts, many have merit, but few succeed. What separates the two is luck. In addition to being false, a growing body of research in psychology and neuroscience suggests that believing in meritocracy makes people more selfish, less self-critical, and even more prone to acting in discriminatory ways. Meritocracy is not only wrong, it's bad. Okay, and then it goes on from there to justify itself. Okay, fine. I'd like to share some points of view. If he would have given even balance to the idea that historically, not so much today, but historically, in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, even up to the mid-70s, we had a common theme in our society, that you were likely to succeed in life based upon what you put into that successful formula. And we had a foundational belief: character, morals, ethics, concern for family, society, our community, the determination to be intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually disciplined, so that even when tempted by things that would take us off the track of living a proper and balanced life, we would not. We would not always succumb to every whim and pleasure and desire, that we would hold true to certain standards. And for a lot of people, success was that they worked, they got through school, they then found a relationship that they were happy with, started a family. That was the way it was. That is not the way it is today. You don't talk about any of those factors in the modern family if you're the average modern family. And I absolutely agree that meritocracy has been the dominant meme in the professional community. And we're not talking about a few people. We're talking about upwards of 180 million Americans are in the professional classes, 71 million professionals, lawyers, doctors, engineers, scientists, consultants, and then their family members. And their family members are going to have a certain expectation. And if those expectations are not based upon merit, then the expectation is, if my father and mother or both are successful, then I am the beneficiary of that success. Therefore, there's a high probability that whatever the parents believe the child should have to make them happy, even if they don't work for it or show appreciation for it, they should be given that. Because there's very little time most people make for proper parenting or understanding what it is to be a child and what it is to be a parent guiding that child. They're given private schooling. Let's be realistic. Let's be honest. If you're not terribly bright and you want to get into Harvard, you can if your parents have given enough money. Look at the endowments, and we did, for all the major Ivy League schools. They're in the billions of dollars. And but you don't see people going to public schools and state universities giving endowments, because you're not creating a legacy to which your own children will be a beneficiary of. Think of how many people are working in jobs that they didn't earn that title to get into that job. It was given to them, this entitlement mindset. And now we consider entitlement the same as a merit-based society. My parents worked hard. They succeeded. I have not had to work hard. I want to enjoy life. I don't have time for a lot of stuff, and I don't have any of these disciplines because I wasn't taught these things, but I deserve it. So then people show up feeling that they're entitled to things that historically people actually had to be, let's say, committed to. The idea that meritocracy in and of itself is bad is, in my opinion, missing the point entirely. So then what you're going to say is that it doesn't matter, everybody deserves the same opportunity. I agree, but not everyone deserves the same outcome. Your outcome is going to be based upon what you put into that, the circumstances in which you find yourself, and I don't believe that luck plays much of a role in that. I believe that having people facilitate you in a career is what makes the difference. I've seen that because I've seen what happens when mediocre people have a door open for them in Hollywood or in the music business or in literature. There's a lot of mediocre writers who had friends who were editors, and someone opened the door. If you've got an agent, you get into a door. If you don't have an agent, you can knock on that door forever, and it's likely you will never get that opportunity. So facilitators of our success is a big missing gamut that this person didn't even discuss. And then, of course, in corporate America, you nurture the people coming behind you. So if you're willing to toe the line, if you're willing to be obedient, if you're willing to play by the rules that the corporation has established, even if they're unethical, immoral, or amoral, you know that someone's going to facilitate your change from one position to another, always going up. That's not based upon merit, nor is it based upon luck. It is based upon the facilitation of circumstances. And who facilitates the circumstance? Who says that a radio show should go on the air and who should not go on the air? Is it based upon merit alone? Or are there favoritism, a political favoritism, let's say an ideological favoritism, a feminist favoritism? All the different favoritisms that bias us then allow us to give opportunity for people not based upon their merit, but based upon them harmonizing with us. But then look at the people who would disagree with you. Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, recognized for the brilliance and achievements in their craft. They didn't get that by luck. Catherine I of Russia, born into a family of Lithuanian peasants, orphaned at the age of 3 after both her parents died from the plague. She became the most powerful woman in the world. That was not luck. Zhu Yangzheng, the Hongwu emperor. How did he start it off? Being in an emperor family? No, he was a Chinese peasant and orphan who joined a monastery to fight starvation, and he was a beggar. Eventually brought down the entire Mughal dynasty. Charles Dickens, his father squandered the family finances and was eventually sent to prison for not paying his debts. And while the rest of the family joined his father behind bars, 12-year-old Charles was sent to labor on the assembly line in a shoe polishing factory. Mahatma Gandhi, what luck did he have? Martin Luther King, who gave him luck? They gave him a bullet, and they sicked dogs on him, and he was arrested. Luck had nothing to do with it. The merit of his integrity, his spiritual integrity, his social activist commitment integrity, that is a merit to which we will all honor that today and be inspired by. But some of the greatest artists who came up from poverty are only becoming world-renowned today after they've died. El Greco, Emily Dickinson, Claude Monet, Johann Sebastian Bach, Franz Kafka, Henry David Thoreau, the African-American folk artist Zora Hurston, Vincent van Gogh, Henry Miller, H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, Herman Melville. What about Albert Einstein? Was it luck? No, he couldn't get a job in physics after graduation. He worked as an assistant patent examiner. And Bridget Mason, a slave who became Africa's first real estate tycoon. And Benjamin Franklin, do you know that he had to drop out of school at the age of 10 to become an indentured servant to a printmaker, one of 17 children? And what about Abraham Lincoln? That's a classic example of rags to prominence. That wasn't based upon luck. Frederick Douglass. What did Frederick Douglass say? Quote, allowing only ordinary ability and opportunity, we may explain success mainly by one word, and that one word is work, 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 work. That's Frederick Douglass. And Nazi scientists brought to U.S. on Operation Paperclip, notably Hermann von Braun, the V-2 rocket inventor, and Hans Ziegler, and rocket scientist Herbert Wagner. Yep, and Andrew Carnegie, born in a typical weaver's cottage with only one main room, and another family shared that room, became the wealthiest man in the world. That was meritocracy. Good or bad is irrelevant. John D. Rockefeller's father was a lumberman and then a traveling salesman who identified himself as a botanic physician. He sold elixirs. Booker T. Washington grew up a slave and worked in salt and coal mines in conflict with W.E.B. Du Bois over African-American issues. And Washington argued that blacks had to first work hard, manifest the virtues of industry and thrift, and achieve economy and economic success. And once this occurred, he argued the rights they sought would naturally flow. Well, you agree or disagree, but look at his life. Thomas Edison received only 3 months of formal schooling, and the rest of his education came from his mother's homeschooling and reading classic books. And Nelson Mandela, was that luck that he served 27 years in prison and suddenly became president? No. He persisted. Contemporary people, I'm thinking of Larry Ellison and J.K. Rowling and many people. It doesn't matter whether they use their money or success for the betterment of society or not, or their own individual riches. That's a separate issue. But the idea that meritocracy in and of itself is bad, I believe that you should reconsider, because a lot of what we achieve today, a lot of what we've learned today, a lot of the people who sacrificed because of their uniqueness of being, we wouldn't have any of that today. If we said everybody's equal, everybody has the same outcome. If you're 5'4" and you want to play for the Celtics, you should be allowed to, otherwise there's discrimination. We should have no meritocracy in anything. Good luck with that. But unfortunately, if that's the idea, then we're going to make it seem as if anyone who succeeds in anything by determination, scholarship, commitment, discipline is a fool and someone to be pitied and shamed with virtue shaming, when we should all have to do nothing but just show up and be rewarded. There's a downside to condemning meritocracy, but there's a lot of people who are successful who quite simply didn't deserve it and didn't work on it their own. It's a far more complex issue than what this article presents. So I just wanted to share a different point of view. I'm Gary Null. Thank you all for listening. Have a nice day.